I think NPCs are the lifeblood of every campaign. They are what makes your world feel alive, a fantastic way to impart knowledge to your players, and make some very memorable moments. Players will fall in love with them and loathe their very presence. I know this seems like a huge hurdle, but it's much easier than you think. Let me get one thing out of the way. You don't have to do an accent, ever.
Right.
You can, and I'll give you some tips on that later, but there's thousands of other ways to portray your NPCs. You don't even need to speak in character. It can be as simple as saying, the mechanic says the ship's repairs will take 3 days to complete. So long as your NPCs, and players for that matter, are making decisions in character, you're role-playing. That's all it is. One of the things to think about when you're making your NPCs is how important are they actually to the world or to your plot? If it's just a passing merchant, a low-level thug, you don't really need to put too much thought into it. Maybe a flicker of description to set them apart, a long scar down the side of their face, or a strange outfit. That's all it takes to make them feel lived in for that little moment of time. And it keeps the characters from feeling static or flat. Cardboard cutouts. More important NPCs, or maybe less important ones who grow to be more important, typically get a little bit more detail. A goal, specific mannerisms, these little things that'll flesh them out a little bit more and make them feel more like a person instead of just a snapshot. For example, let's build out this NPC. We'll call him Palmer. Now, looking at this picture at a very basic level, we know two things about Palmer. They have hella cool sunglasses and a devil-may-care attitude. That's all you really need for their character, especially if they're not going to be popping in and out of the narrative. You just need enough that the players can see them as a real person in a world who may or may not have some items that they need. Now, let's take this a little deeper. You're trying to speak in character and shake things up a little bit, but they all kind of sound the same. You still don't need accents. You can alter your speech patterns and physicality in order to portray these characters. Some people might speak with a lot of ums, or very slowly and deliberately. A farmer might praise their god at the end of every other sentence. Maybe some of them tend to speak really quickly and start to ramble and kind of go off on some other tangent until someone cuts them off. Changing your posture can also have an effect on the way that you speak. Try to give an evil line with your back hunched over like Igor, and then again with your back straight. You've fallen into my trap and now no one can stop me. You've fallen into my trap and now no one can stop me. Both are good for different villains. Now let's build this out with Palmer. Palmer looks like they're from some sort of cyberpunk-esque space, so maybe they're partially or totally an android. As a result, they could speak very formally, and since their model isn't optimized for peripheral vision, maybe when they turn to address your players, they turn their whole head, never just their eyes. All of these are tiny little clues that point to their semi or totally android nature, still without doing an accent. Now, to get better at doing these voices, you're gonna need to practice. I listen to podcasts when I drive, and I live in LA. I drive a lot. So what I like to do is I'll actually try to imitate the speaking style of whatever podcast host I happen to be listening to. For example, Soren Wheeler on Planet Money has a wildly different speaking style than Dan Carlin in Hardcore History. Neither of them have wild accents, but you would never mistake one for the other. This probably feels kind of silly at first, but this is how everyone learned to speak. You copy your speaking styles from those around you. Anyone from family members to friends, teachers, co-workers. The comedian Trevor Noah does fantastic accent work, and he credits that all to copying his friends and the way they specifically speak. As you begin to embody these characters too, it's also worth thinking about the way that the world sees them. Maybe other androids find Palmer's attempts at humanity childish, and thus will always talk over him. Maybe non-enhanced life forms find him unsettling, close to being human but not quite. Now, we have some questions we could answer. Is Palmer full synthetic? How do they react to being caught between these two spaces? If they could fully change one way or the other, would they? Let's take another example, someone who ums and ahs a lot. People might think they're indecisive. They might get interrupted frequently by people who speak faster than they do. Now, let's go another layer deeper. Are they actually a little slow or quite brilliant and just scatterbrained? How do they react to being interrupted? Frequently, as a shortcut for this, I'll actually kind of cast NPCs in my mind. Usually I'll take them directly from a movie, TV show, video game, something. They don't have to be in similar roles at all, and in fact I think it works better if they're not. It's just kind of to give myself a base to go off for speech patterns, mannerisms, expressions. This is actually one of those things where being bad at impressions is a huge advantage. It's incredibly distracting and takes people out of the game if they can recognize the bartender's Christopher Walken. Your players won't hear your bad Chidi Anagonia impression. They're just going to hear the royal messenger agonizing over delivering the bad news or waiting and seeing if it just goes away. The more obscure the character, the better. This is also fantastic when you have to come up with an NPC on the fly. Not every NPC is planned ahead, so sometimes their name and personality might be a little suspiciously similar to your favorite TV show character. Don't worry, I'm sure they won't catch who Christat is inspired by. Probably. Alright, now as promised, let's talk accents. I've used accents at my table to differentiate between characters speaking different languages, to highlight characters who have left their homeland, or just because it's fun. I also want to state it for the record, I am no Brennan Lee Mulligan or Matt Mercer. I am terrible at accents. If you want proof, you can listen to Crit Squad. And remember, your game is probably not being live streamed or anything. You don't need to be good at these accents. You should be considerate of actual cultures that exist within our world, but at the end of the day, you're entertaining your circle of friends. That's it. You're all already pretending to be space wizards or whatever. It's fine. I promise. And if you want to get better, there's bunches of how-to videos right here on YouTube. And then you can practice these alone in your car, with your dog, whatever works for you. But at the end of the day, there's no reason your bad Italian accent can't be a great Waterdavian accent. Now, for our Palmer character, I don't know if he necessarily needs an accent at all. You could go for stereotypical roboticness, but it might be a little bit on the nose, and honestly, we already get the idea that he's an android. I don't think we need to hammer that in any deeper. Another thing you can use to bring your NPCs to life is to use props. Hats, cups, rings, pipes are all fantastic little props that can help set you in, and you can use them for the same reason every great actor does, to give you something to do with your hands. Palmer here looks like he has a little light device that he might fidget with. Maybe your Starship Navigator adjusts their glasses every time they look between the DAT pad and the view screen. Or the aristocrat can just look into his drink, bored out of his mind. If you do this enough, players will see you reaching for your Captain Reginald hat and act as though he literally walked into the room. When you're thinking about these props too, also think about how they actually tie into the characters themselves. The behaviors that drive them to interact with these props also probably inform who they are. Flat or simple NPCs usually don't need too much depth beyond selling gear to gullible adventurers, but more recurring characters can have more thought put into them, and you can build on that each time that they appear again and again. How do they feel about the players? Do they consider the characters to be helpful or more trouble than they're worth? How do they feel about the players interacting with other NPCs that they know? These are all great questions to ask yourself as you're building out major NPCs, the ones the players love or love to hate. It makes them feel like the characters are a part of the world that they're impacting. Now, there's a fine line here too. You might have heard the term DMPC thrown around, Dungeon Master's player character. This refers to a phenomenon where, for a wide range of reasons, the Dungeon Master will have an NPC that follows the party around closely, almost as if, and sometimes actually as a member. The trick here is you don't want their motivations to overshadow the player characters. Only support. It also shouldn't feel like you're vicariously playing in your own campaign. Now, a lot of the times this isn't intentional. Sometimes GMs just come up with NPCs and they grow really attached to them and they want the players to be as attached to them as they are. And sometimes the players will decide to help that NPC of their own free will, and that's great. But if you end up finding yourself trying to align the goals of your players with that of the NPC, maybe it's time to take a step back and re-examine that relationship. And speaking of favorite NPCs, I do want to make a special mention of how you can make your players fall in love with your NPCs and get them to care about them genuinely. It's something I've seen a lot of GMs struggle with. Now, it is absolutely a kind of alchemy. There's no one right way that's going to work for every player or every group. In general, though, we do tend to admire people who have a few key characteristics. They are good at their job, they're unique in some, maybe small way, and perhaps most important of all, they like us. If, say, an NPC bartender asks the characters what their last adventure was, you have a great role-playing moment where not only the NPC bartender can express awe and admiration for what's overcome, the players can also stretch the truth a little bit. Think about all the times Jaskier talks about how he saved Geralt in The Witcher. Let them gush over the player characters, tell them how badass they are, and give them free food and drinks. In my experience, and I have no idea why this is, there is very, very little players like more than free imaginary drinks and gold. Well, that's just about all the time we have today. If you have any questions, concepts, or problems that you'd like us to talk about, You can find us on Blue Sky at Biscuit Wolf Games, or shoot us an email at biscuitwolfgames@gmail. You can also find some of our own RPG supplements at itch.io and DriveThruRPG under the Biscuit Wolf banner.